Hey there everybody, Mike here, coming at you from Badlands Paintball. Well, we've recently had a few requests on our YouTube channel, but also on our Facebook page. People are just curious about the TGR2, namely where they have to oil the marker, so how to maintain it. People also want to know how to swap out the velocity spring. Fortunately, these two things actually kind of come hand in hand. If you're changing your velocity spring, it's going to be the same way, but just a few steps further to take out your bolt assembly and the rammer assembly. So that's what I'm going to show you guys here today. I'm going to peel you in a little bit closer. We'll show you how to swap out that velocity spring and how to pull out your internals and where you're going to want to look for oil and which O-rings you might need to swap out in the future. So come on in closer here. I'll take a little bit of a better look at the Scarab Arms TGR2. Alright guys and girls, so I've got my Scarab Arms TGR2 here in front of me. I also have the spring kit that came stock with the TGR2 itself. Now this TGR2 does require 0 tools for disassembly, but you know what, for me I always like to have just this little bit of a larger Allen key here. The TGR2 does use push pin technology to disassemble everything. I find instead of using my fingers, it's sometimes just a little bit easier, especially when the gun's brand spanking new, to push those push pins out with an Allen key. So if you want to get a little bit bigger Allen key, maybe a small screwdriver could give you a little bit of a helping hand. But don't worry if you don't have anything on the field, especially when you work your gun in, it is going to be able to pop out without any sort of tools. So let's get started here. Before we do anything, we are going to want to make sure that our gun is completely degassed, uncocked. So I don't have any sort of gas in there. The marker's not in a cocked position, so I'm good to go there. So I will want to strip off my barrel for starters, just to get it out of the way. Now there's a charging rod up top here. You're going to want to unscrew that as well. So that's just right here. You're going to unscrew that all the way. This rod is what actually creates the spring tension for your cocking handle. So make sure you don't lose this spring that's on the rod as well. Keep those two pieces together. We'll set them off to the side of the barrel. At this point we can remove our magazine because we're not going to need that anymore. And now we're going to want to remove our rear stock and air tank. So to remove the stock, you're actually just going to use this lever and shift everything off the back. Now normally to shift your stock back and forth, you're going to push down on this lever and you can go one way or the other, but it does stop when you get to the back. To pull the stock completely off, you're actually going to pull up on that lever and then shift it out of the back. So again, you're going to pull up instead of push down. Alright, now that stock is out of the way, we can actually twist our tank right off here. We'll shift those off to the side. Now we're good to complete our disassembly. Now, this is where it's going to split. If you only need to adjust your velocity, so you only need to swap out your velocity springs, you're only going to need to pop out these 2 rear push pins and then take off your back block. So that's what we're going to do right now. To actually change out the rest of your internals, your inner O-rings, you have to take off the rest of the grip frame. So for starters, let's switch out our velocity springs. So we're going to do that just by popping these 2 rear push pins. I'm going to get my Allen key just to help me out with that one. Perfect. Now, before you remove the second Allen key, make sure you have a little bit of tension on your back block there. If you don't have any tension on that back block, when you push out this final push pin, it will be spring loaded and it may want to pop out on you. So you can actually see here when I release it, yeah, it's got quite a bit of spring tension on there. So if you were at a paintball field and you weren't ready for it, this could come flying off and then gone goes your velocity spring. So you can see here our velocity spring is actually sticking right at the back, so we can actually shift that right out. It does go into the bottom hole. There's actually a guide pin on the inside, a silver guide pin that you'll be able to see, and the spring just sits over top that guide pin. Again, there's really only 2 holes, one larger one smaller one. The spring will go on the smaller one. Now we can actually shift that block off to the side there. On the inside of your marker kit, you will have had a spare spring kit here. So this spring kit comes with 4 extra springs. You've got 2 with a red tip. These are the longest springs. These are going to be cut by you, if you so wish to anyway, to adjust, to make, a custom velocity. Now you cannot cut them any lower than 80 millimeters. If they go too short, you actually won't have enough force to actually cycle your entire valve design here. So you don't want to go lower than 80, but you can go anywhere in between that 80 millimeters and your full length. Now we do have 2 other springs in here, one very short one and one quite long, and those are your stock spring that I just pulled out of your TGR actually sits right between those 2 in terms of length. So I know that the longest spring is going to be around 300 feet per second, that short spring is going to be around 250 feet per second, so I'm guessing this medium spring here, the stock spring, is going to be around 275. So if you did want to upgrade to the 300 feet per second for a little bit higher velocity, just pull that spring out, shift it to the bottom here, and you could reattach your back block. Now I want to show you guys what O-rings you have to oil on the inside of your paintball gun. So let's hold off on that right now. We can actually shift those springs back into the box, and let's open up the rest of your gun here. And it's very easy. You just have to remove this bottom trigger frame here, and that's just going to be one push pin in the front right there, and now we can shift this entire trigger frame right off of its base. Now keep in mind, guys, that you do have 3 push pins here. The 2 bottom push pins are longer. Those will be for the 2 bases here. The short push pins for the top. So just make sure you keep that in mind as you're pulling them apart. So now that our trigger frame's off, I can actually pull all my guts out just by pulling on this cocking handle here. And you'll see everything slides right out of the gun. So you can shift that cocking handle off to the side. We've got our rammer here with the buffer O-ring, our bolt itself with the pin on top, and then you do have your rear block. So there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 total O-rings that you're going to have to worry about, okay? So just 1 O-ring on the rammer. Now you're going to oil this marker, okay? So it's not going to be grease. You are going to oil the marker, and you're really just going to want to put 1 droplet of oil on each O-ring. So 1 on the rammer, 4 droplets, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the bolt. When you put that oil droplet on the O-rings, just wipe it around with your finger. So you're going to drop that oil on and then wipe it around with your finger, making sure that you have a nice even coverage on each O-ring. You do not have to completely fill up the inside of your gun with oil. You do not need to put oil all over the rest of the metal surfaces, okay? The oil only needs to go on the O-rings themselves. So 1 O-ring on the rammer, 4 on the bolt, and now you've got 4 little O-rings on your rear block, your air through block here. And they're very teeny tiny. You just want to make sure you have a little bit of oil on those as well. Once you've completely oiled up each one of those O-rings, we can reinstall our assembly. So your cocking handle here is going to have a little latch on the left hand side of the gun where the writing is, so you make sure you don't flip it upside down, but it actually won't install there properly upside down, so you don't have to worry too much about that. So you can start shifting that cocking handle in there with our bolt. So actually slide the bolt in a little bit first. The cocking handle actually has a slot in the top where this pin is going to slide through. So we slide that pin through that cocking handle, and I can start shifting all of that in. Now you're going to bring your rammer in last. This silver pin should be facing the back because that's actually what your spring is going to sit on when it's sitting inside. There's a hole on the top of that rammer, and this pin that's connecting from the charging handle through the bolt, that's going to attach to your rammer on the bottom here. So we get our rammer in place, and now shift everything nice and easy in, just like so. Now buffer O-ring is usually a little bit stubborn at the back here, but it actually just floats in there, so you don't have to shift it all the way forward by any means. At this point, we can bring in our spring, whichever spring you've decided on in terms of your velocity. Put that right over top of our pin there. Now you can bring in your back block again. Now when you're bringing in your back block, make sure you watch these 4 small O-rings. You don't want to force anything in. The back block should actually slide in nice and easily. If you're meeting a lot of resistance, make sure you back that off and slide it back in again, okay? So whenever you attach this back block, just make sure you're watching those O-rings. Now before we actually want to touch that back block, we will attach our grip frame here again. So that's just going to slide on very easily, just like so. We'll put our front push pin back in. Bam. And now we can bring in our back block. So again, spring goes into the small hole and the whole thing shifts right on. And you can see how nice and easily that slides on there. So it doesn't take a lot of force. I'm just going to hold it as I install my top push pin here. Always install the top first, then we can install our bottom push pin. Perfect. Now we can't really cock our gun yet because we don't have our spring back in the front here, so let's shift that cocking rod back in, and you're just going to twist it down until it's tightened all the way. Perfect. You can reinstall our barrel if we want to. Just like so. Let's thread our air tank back on, just shift that arm down. Perfect. And now we can line up this tank and arm. Get them shifted on, then pull up on that arm and shift everything right back in. Reinstall our magazine. We're good to go. Cock that. Make sure it works. We're happy campers. Alright guys and girls, so that should have given you all a good look at how to maintain your TGR2. So it's really just about making sure that those O-rings on your bolts are in good condition and oiled. You've got the one on your rammer, and then the other 4 in the back of your rear block here that you're going to have to maintain. So again, just oil those O-rings. You don't have to oil the entire internals of the marker itself. Just oil those O-rings, you'll be a happy camper. You've also seen the spring kit there that you've come with, so now you know how to swap out those springs. And you do have that, again, remember the 2 extra red springs that you can cut to make sure that you have a velocity that you see fit. Just make sure you don't cut too low, and then you won't be able to get enough velocity at all. So just keep that in mind. You know how to swap out those springs, you know how to oil your gun. Now if you do want to see the Scarab Arms TGR2, feel free to come into any of our 8 locations across Canada. Got tons of guys and girls in the shops there that'll be more than willing to help you out. Now we do have the Scarab Arms on our website as well at www.BadlandsPaintball.com, so you can definitely check that out. Now while you're online, like I always say, check us out on our Facebook and Twitter pages. Again, the Facebook page is actually where we got the idea for this video because we had a few people asking for it. So it's just a great place to go on, ask any questions you have related to paintball, and just kind of dig on the paintball community in general. Now you are watching this YouTube video, which I much appreciate. Badlands loves you for it. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to hit the like button down there in the corner and leave your comments, guys. Again, it makes it really easy, helps me do my job if you guys tell me what you want to see out there. So again, hopefully this helped you guys out. Hopefully your Scarab Arms is shooting just the way you want it to now. So pick up that gun, throw on your paintball mask, and go out and play some paintball. We'll see you guys later.